Hey, this is Chris Alexander. I'm a writer, director, composer, live music performer, magazine editor, publisher, an avid aficionado of film history, but specifically strange cinema, horror films, fantasy, the arcane, the surreal, the esoteric. That's my wheelhouse, and it has been since I've been aware that there was anything like that in existence, literally since I was a little boy. And nothing's changed except for the fun fact, the happy twists of fate, that I've managed to kind of make a living doing what I love. I've loved horror movies since I've had a memory. I recall I was about 3, and I saw a movie called, I later found out it was called She-Beast, directed by Michael Reeves, who would also go on to direct The Witchfinder General and The Sorcerers before dying, sadly, of a barbiturate overdose, I think.
The She-Beast, deadlier than Dracula, wilder than the werewolf, more frightening than Frankenstein.
But it was a witch being dunked into the water, which later I found out was Barbara Steele, who later became a good friend of mine, which is one of those, again, weird twists of fate and fortune. But she was screaming, this hag dipping in and out, and then I saw that and I was like, what am I looking at? And then I saw the album Love Gun by Kiss in the library, and Gene Simmons with his fangs and his bat wings, and I was like, oh my god, what am I looking at? And then I went to the House of Frankenstein Wax Museum in Niagara Falls, Canada, and I was terrified. I was like, what am I looking at? Anyways, all that stuff kind of combined with a fascination for things that were not part of the mainstream, which were darker and stranger and nightmarish. You know, you'd have these nightmares and they were evocative and full of imagery and they'd haunt you, and I always wanted to intellectualize it as to why I was afraid of this stuff. Luckily, my mom and my dad were really cool with me exploring weird stuff, because my dad especially loved horror and science fiction and fantasy. And I had kind of like a wide canvas to explore all this stuff. And it never changed. I used to smuggle Fangorias to school, which my aunt would help me buy when I was really little. And I'd freak out the girls, and the guys were like obsessed, and I wanted to be Rick Baker and Tom Savini and George Romero, and just when I saw Dawn of the Dead, my whole life changed. I mean, it was just a non-stop exposure, an obsession, a mounting obsession, both visceral and intellectual, to this stuff. And yeah, I mean, fast forward through many, many years, because I stuck with it, I ended up taking over Fangoria as an adult, which was insane, and then was allotted, the chance to make my first movie. And once I got a taste of that, it never stopped, and it will never stop until I stop. So loving this stuff, the only thing that has changed from my early days is that I'm still a seeker, but I'm seeking sometimes, I think just my certain kind of tastes, what I'm looking for, have honed in, have kind of fine-tuned. So the kinds of cinema I really respond to, I know what I like, And I love all cinema. I'm open to romantic comedies where you throw it at me. If it's like a good song is a good song, a good movie is a good movie. But I know specifically what kind of cinema really sticks to me. So I've just become a more, not jaded at all. In fact, the opposite, completely open to all forms of expression and refusing to kind of put parameters around what a horror movie is. I find horror in all walks of film. I think the moment I realized, I've always loved the weird stuff, but the moment I realized that our life was finite, which was pretty early on, the concepts of death. When that hits you as a young person, when it hits you as any person, it's like you hit a wall. It's very cosmic, because my son, my middle son, my 11-year-old, the other day said, "What was I before I was born?" And I was like, "Well, nothing. You were nothing. And what will I be after I'm dead?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, but it could be that it's over again. It's full circle, nothing. I don't know." And he's just like, he's staring off into the abyss. And I remember that because you just can't wrap your head around any of it. So searching for answers, I searched in film, and I found them. At least I didn't find concrete answers, which none of us ever will until we do. But I certainly was exposed to more questions, more trains of thought. Cinema, as I say, has been my window to the world. And in horror movies, which are kind of boil everything down in their essence to concepts of sex and death and then what's beyond the door. Sometimes in a very juvenile way, sometimes in a very sophisticated way. On both levels, I ended up finding, being stimulated by that kind of entertainment. And I still am. It's just maybe I don't obviously. If I watch a Friday the 13th movie, it means nothing to me anymore, except a kind of like a waste of 90 minutes, a little bit of fun. But I look to other things, maybe like Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built or something, to go a little bit darker and weirder and a little more cerebral, a little more sophisticated. But it's still all horror.